This is a story about a dude named Lane. He moved to the mainland and bought one place to stay. And then one day he went try to rent them out. And then he became one real investor man. Buddy, this is Lane with the Simple Passive Cash Flow Podcast. Please go to the website and sign up for a free call with me, and we can chat about what's coming up on the Hui Deal Pipeline. And also, please leave me a review on iTunes. Today, I got Kevin Bupp online. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, Lane. How you doing today, bud?
So, Kevin is the host of the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast, and his new Mobile Home Investing Academy is taking off. Kevin and I talked probably about 2 years ago, and, just you're kind of the inspiration of having calls with investors here and there. And, when I had it, you probably don't remember it. But yeah, you were a lot of help. You're more on the commercial side and the mobile home side, but a lot of good insight. So thank you for that, Kevin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're very welcome. I remember the call, Lane. That's actually one thing I'm good at is I remember names pretty well. So.
Oh, good. So Kevin, how much simple passive cash flow are you making today, and how are you doing it?
How much simple passive cash flow? I don't know if it's ever simple, but it obviously takes work. I don't just sit back on a beach chair every day and collect my money from our rental properties, but we're doing quite well. We own over 1,000 mobile home rental pads, so we have multiple mobile home parks that we have in our ownership. And honestly, to give you the number, as a company, we probably have over $1 million. Probably about $1.5 million of gross rental income a year, but obviously that gets distributed in different ways with our partnership. So it's kind of hard to give you the exact number of the passive cash flow that I get on a monthly or on a yearly basis, because we're always buying properties and we're always selling properties. So, but it's not simple. I don't know. So it's the simple path. I like the name of your show, but I wouldn't say that our business is simple. I love it, so it's not work for me, but it definitely takes 40 hours a week from me to make it happen.
Yeah, I think a lot of the comments from the listeners, have had a lot of apartment syndicators, operators like yourself, and they're saying, well, this isn't the simple passive cash flow podcast. It should be the super active, complicated, doing all sorts of things cash flow podcast. But the point is to bring people like yourself to kind of show people what different avenues for different cash flow is, different streams of businesses.
Yeah. No, I mean, we have systems and processes in place that allow us. I mean, we're a company. I'm not just one individual that has just a couple rental properties. I mean, we have a company infrastructure. We're not a big company, but I mean, we have lots of moving pieces, lots of parts of our business, and so it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of effort. But we're also in a growing stage. I'm not at a point in my life where I own X amount of rental properties and I've met my goal. Like I've got multiple goals, but I just enjoy the business so much, Lane, that I don't have necessarily a monetary goal of like, hey, once I reach this amount of passive income each month, like I'm done, because I really enjoy what I do. I love the mobile home park business and I love real estate investing in general, that I intend to do it for a long time, and we'll just continue to build our infrastructure so that it can support our growth. We just launched a $10 million mobile home park fund, and so we've got about 7 parks. We have 7 parks in the contract now, and we're really ramping up our marketing. So we're really hoping to add 1,000 other rental pads to our portfolio this year. So and it takes a lot of work to do that.
And so you aren't always a mobile home investor, even in real estate. What was your take us back to that point and tell us a little bit about your Han Solo moment where you life took a pivot point there and you burned the boats and did what you're doing.
Well, I got lucky because I never necessarily had to burn the boats and burn the bridges and go from like a career to being a real estate investor. I was introduced to it. I was very lucky. I was introduced to it at 19, and I had no interest, so I wasn't looking for something. I didn't know what I wanted in life at that point in time. I was in community college and tending bar part time to make money and just having fun, but really I wasn't driven to do anything in life. I knew I wanted to do something bigger, but I had no idea what it was. And I just got lucky. I got introduced to a guy that later became a mentor of mine and a partner as well for a period of time. But he introduced me to single family homes and small multifamily. And so I started, like a lot of people do, by buying single family homes. Now, I wasn't really doing a lot of fix and flips, although I did a few. Mostly I was looking for cash flow. He was a cash flow investor. He just did it on a smaller scale. And so that's kind of what he instilled into me. And so I got my start by buying single family homes. Once I learned that business, I ramped it up in a big way and, had acquired hundreds of units, of single family as well as apartment units. And then 2008 kind of happened to me, and the world kind of came crashing down, and lots of things changed with me. And I went into a stage of my life where I was going to rebuild, and that was 2010, 2011. And I knew I was going to get back into multifamily. I didn't want to get back into single family homes because it just didn't work for me. It wasn't scalable enough. It just took a lot of time, a lot of energy, and I knew I could get there faster with apartment buildings. And that was a point in time where I was actually introduced to mobile home parks. And I had really never had an intent to buy mobile home parks, never knew too much about it, knew of them, but just never really spent any time or energy learning the intricacies of that business. But someone turned me on to it, and here we are today. That's all we buy as our mobile home parks, and we own them in 7 different states. And I don't really would have no intent at this point of ever buying another single family home again, unless it was for my own primary residence. Apartments are good. It's just they're really challenging to buy at this point at the right price. So we get the returns we want, we get the passive income that we're looking for, and there's tons of opportunity in the mobile home park space. So that's where we focus.
My opinion is everybody needs to start off with single family homes. That's the prerequisite. And then it's easier to branch off into whether you want to do land investing, apartment buildings, or mobile homes.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that everyone has to start with single family homes. I think that everyone should start smaller. I think everyone needs to understand the both sides of the business, and both sides of the business are the actual operational side of the business, like the landlording side, which isn't the fun part, but understanding tenant landlord laws and just how to deal with tenants, how to find filter out the right ones, get rid of the bad ones. And so I think everyone needs to understand that side of the business, and they also need to understand a lot of times the renovation side of the business, not necessarily swinging the hammer themselves, but actually how to find and manage renovation crews and get work done at a reasonable rate. And obviously that's easier to do on a smaller scale than it is a larger scale on your first time or your first go around. So if you're just going to be, hey, I want to become a real estate investor, going out and buying a 100-unit property that was in distress, that would be overwhelming. I'm not saying it can't be done if you have the right team, but you might be better off if you want to get into that business, into apartments, maybe buy a 4-unit building like that. That's very, very viable, and it's not too much that can go wrong. It's such a smaller scale; it's a lot more manageable. And so I would say that if I gave any advice, I would say that if you're thinking single family and you want passive income, then why not get a multifamily, but keep it 4 units or under, like a 2, 3, or 4 unit, because now you got the benefits of the attractive residential financing, but you're also gaining some scales of economy because you got multiple units underneath the one roof versus just having a single family home. So my advice would be slightly different. I would say do not do single family. Not that they're bad, but if you're a passive cash flow investor, so like if you're looking to fix and flip, probably single family. But if you're looking to actually build cash flow, start small multifamily, and then learn your systems, learn your processes, prove your craft, and then go out in the bigger scale.
I think I'll just say that one of the things that personally it really helped me was initially that big boost of appreciation in the beginning. The first half decade of when I got started. And that's just very hard to do when you have a small multifamily. So just keep that in mind too.
Well, you can always force appreciation. I mean, so there's considerations like that as well. I mean, if you're buying something fully stabilized that is in a market that's at its peak, the rents are already, maxed out, then there's not really much there that you can do other than just run it and get whatever returns you're going to get. But I guess I may just we a lot of things we buy, Lane, have different types of distress to them, and most of the time, one of the distress points, it's actually not really a distress point, but a lot of times we buy things that have undervalued rents, and so the rents haven't been raised in a period of time, or they're slightly or significantly below what the market could bear. And so for us, we can very quickly force appreciation in a very big way. I mean, we've had deals where, in a matter of like 4 months, we forced, $1 million of appreciation. I mean, just like that by raising rents. And so I think that's very common in the mobile home park space. And I think it's also quite common in the small multifamily space, because you find a lot of smaller operators and mom and pops that own these smaller types of multifamily units. And I think that opportunity exists there as well. You're not going to add $1 million of value to a 4-unit property, but you sure as heck might be able to add $100,000 of value pretty quickly just by raising rents to market.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point there. Like, normally what people are doing, they're doing the forced equity and they're buying distressed properties. I think a lot of listeners on this podcast, we're the more, we're working professionals, so we don't really have the time. A lot of people are doing turnkey rentals, which, you're not going to get any of that really appreciation or stuff like that. So good point.
Yeah,
Brought up.
I've got a challenge. I hope that that's not your business lane to where you offer turnkey rentals. And if it is, I'm sorry, but everyone's got their opinions. But I don't like that business too much. It's good for really busy people to a certain extent, but I have some challenges with that business model. These are just my opinions, and that's all. It shouldn't make a difference in your final decision if it's going to work for you or not. You got to figure that out for yourself. But the idea of like you're pretty much paying retail for turnkey rentals. I mean, you're not the provider is squeezing most of the equity out of it, and there's not much equity left. And they're most of the time in their markets that are very linear, and so they don't appreciate a ton. Like it's not like a Florida market or a California or Arizona to where they're jumping up double digits each and every year in appreciation. And so that's my first challenge, is that there's not a lot of an exit out of them if you're getting debt on them, because you just paid retail for something, you got debt on it. And the second challenge I have with that business model is how they're evaluated as far as the value is concerned. And they use an income approach a lot of times on a single family home, whereas if you go to sell that home, more than likely your end buyer, there's a good chance it's going to be an owner occupant. And that owner occupant is going to use a comparative sales approach, because that's what appraisers use in single family homes. And so there's a very good chance that if you ever go to exit out of it, that thing's going to be valued from a comparative sales approach and not an income approach. And in some markets that might hurt you. You might not get out of it. It might not be worth from a comparable sales approach what it's worth as an income approach. And so those are two big challenges I have with that model. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm not saying that there's people that don't do really well with it. It's just I think that there's other good alternatives out there. So
yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I started with the turnkey rentals and it got me in the game, and for that reason alone, I suggest it to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And people, they say exactly what you're saying. You're not going to get that forced equity or that buying, you're buying retail. But it's like, you guys got to be self-aware. I mean, if you guys have a busy job that where you have so much money burning a hole in your pocket, you got to start somewhere. And I had a interesting question. I'll let you answer it. Somebody asked me, are there any turnkey rentals for commercial buildings or rentals, apartment buildings? And what's your answer there?
I don't think so. I mean, apartment buildings, bigger apartment buildings, I guess you could almost look at them as their turnkeys, because most of the time you don't manage them yourself anyway. I mean, they're being managed by a professional management company. And so it's just a different business model. I mean, so you could call any apartment building could be a turnkey rental, because you're not physically going to go sit in the management office and manage a 100-unit property. You're going to have a professional do it. And that's kind of the model behind single family home turnkey rentals, is that you're not managing it. I mean, there's a third-party provider that's basically doing the renovations and also coming in and actually managing it for you. And the same happens in the apartment space. Like a lot of these apartment management companies, some of them are very experienced in turnarounds. So you could literally buy a distressed apartment building and find a management company that's got experience in doing the turnaround or repositioning, and then take it over after it's stabilized. And so that's just something to think about. I mean, that kind of exists already. It's just not called that, you know? But I don't know of any providers that truly offer like turnkey commercial properties that like would call it that. So yeah, no, I'm not sure, bud.
Yeah, I think that when I call turnkey, the biggest thing that sticks out in my head is the procurement method. I mean, turnkey rentals, you're buying retail, it's right there, you can get it all day. But like apartment buildings or mobile homes, you have to search for a deal, maybe a few hundred you have to analyze, and it's just
you can still buy them for retail. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, that's a lot of things that are for sale right now, and retail is all relevant. Like in retail and a commercial property, it's all relevant to both the cap rate or whatever return metric you're using. I mean, it's all relative to like what meets your financial needs, right? And so like if I'm looking for a 10% cash on cash return, well then that's my retail. Like I'm looking to buy something that meets that investment threshold. And so I need to seek out that apartment building or that mobile home park that meets that. But when I find it, then that's me buying retail. I mean, unless it's got like a market rents that are way below where I can force equity, or I can add units to it, or increase the occupancy or something like that. But it's all relative. So I think that if anyone's out there that are looking at turnkey rentals and they're willing to, be happy with 8% or 9% returns on their money, you shouldn't have an issue finding apartment buildings that meet that. I don't think that's now. If you're looking for apartment buildings that give you double-digit returns, in good markets, that's going to be a challenge. But I think if you're if you're in the middle or high single digits, you still should be able to find stuff out there that meets that criteria. I mean, I know that we're finding we don't buy much stuff on market lane. I mean, in fact, of the 7 deals we have under contract now, 2 of them are actually on market listed deal. The other 5 are not. We go directly to owners a lot, and so and not that gives us better deals, because sometimes they're worse deals. I mean, sometimes like I get owners that call me back and they think their property's worth 3 times what it really is. Just they're not educated. But I mean, we're still finding opportunities all day, every day that are giving us really high 16, 17, 18% cash on cash returns. A lot of times over 20% cash on cash returns. So
what I'd be interested in is like for apartment buildings, for example. You'll go to 99% of the brokers out there and you'll get these deals where, even in a good market, like say Dallas, Texas, you'll see a 100-unit building that the rent to value ratios, I mean, the price per unit, you'll be seeing, around 100,000 or even more. And at those ratios, the rents will be about $900. You're right around 1%. I mean, we're buying properties that are like they have to get at least 1.5% rent to value ratios for the property to even pencil for double digit returns.
Yeah.
So like retail, in the shorter, like retail, you're about 1% rent to value ratio, but for the stuff that actually pencils for a worthy of a syndication, it needs to be like 2% and incredible depressed rents. What is the averages for mobile
That's
homes?
not necessarily true. I mean, because I don't use like a rent to value ratio like you're using. I think that more is mostly applicable in like single family. That's kind of where you see that rent to value ratio formula being used. I mean, we really just look at what's our real cash on cash return. Like that's my metric. I don't care about cap rates. I could literally care less about cap rates, because cap rates are only relevant on a sale. It doesn't matter on the buy. If you're buying, it makes no difference what the cap rate is, because it's basically a value metric that's being applied to how the current owner is operating it and what they think the actual value of that market is. But it factors in none of the other things that we look for, which is like, what value add components are there and like what kind of efficiencies can we gain in the management of that property that the current owner is not obtaining. So I only look at cash on cash returns. I mean, that's all I look at. And I don't even care about IRRs too much, because IRR is kind of the same thing. I look at a lot of apartment syndications. They will promote they don't even mention the cash on cash returns. They're always selling the IRR, and that's assuming an exit in a predetermined amount of time with a predetermined cap rate. So they're basically rubbing their crystal ball and saying, in 5 years, I'm assuming I'm going to be able to sell this apartment complex on a 7 cap. And that equates to this evaluation. And so based on that, my projections for your IRR for our investors is, 16, 18%. I mean, that's literally that's a massive crystal ball. And I bet you if you look at the cash on cash return on that deal, it's probably like 6 or 7%. I mean, it's very, very low. And so they basically have to exit out of that in order to give their investors their, the returns that are attractive that they're selling them on. And for us, it's a little different. For us, we really just look on cash, because that's real money today. That doesn't mean that I have to sell the property or that everything, all the stars have to align in 6 or 7 years when we're thinking of potentially selling in order to get my investors the returns that they've been looking for. I can basically give them their returns on a quarterly basis during distributions, and then there's obviously icing on the cake at the very end when we either sell or do a refinance. In the mobile home park space, typically we're buying stuff, like I said, cash on cash returns, kind of my threshold that we look for. And every deal is different, but I mean, like going in, like I'm talking like buying it today, how it's being operated, whether the rents are below market or that there's, inefficiencies with the management, whatever there is, but like how it's being operated today, I want to know that assuming the type of financing I'm put in place is either bank financing or owner financing, that I can with a 25 or 30% down payment, that I can achieve at minimum a 16 to 18% cash on cash return with the ability to push it over the 20% threshold in year one, like by the end of year one. And that could mean pushing over the threshold by raising rents, by infilling units, by lowering the operating expenses, or all the above. That's kind of what we're looking at. But really, cash on cash return is the only thing that is relevant to me.
What I was trying to capture was a lot of listeners, they'll go out and talk to brokers, and then they'll get these deals out of, Phoenix, Arizona for, the price per unit will be $150,000. And then just the rents are, it's a class C, you're getting $700 a month. And it's just, the broker will say, hey, this is a good deal, man. This is a good deal. Take it. take it. Yeah,
Right.
and I know that that will never work. Next. I mean, I'm sure it's like the same for you. I mean, you have so many deals coming down your inbox, and only like a fraction, like 1% or less, even pencil. What's a quick way that you guys filter? Just so you guys don't waste your time on some of this stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty. So mobile home parks are unique in that they've got like the infrastructure is the thing that really changes the expense ratios, the operational expense ratios, and so like I'll give you just the two ends of the spectrum because I don't want to like get deep into the mud here with trying to answer this so that it confuses people, but. In a perfect world, like the most ideal situation for a mobile home park, and we've got one under contract right now that like literally fits this exact criteria. Every single home in that mobile home park is owned by the tenants, meaning that they just pay lot rent. Okay. And so I'm literally leasing them the land. They own the home. That means I don't have to fix air conditioners, plumbing, electrical, roofs, anything like that. They manage it because they own the home. And then that park that I'm talking to you about also has city supplied utilities, meaning that the city and the sewer supply come from the city. And the city actually maintains the units or maintains the water and sewer lines, and they actually bill the residents directly for their usage, meaning I'm not involved in that process, okay? And a lot of times we are involved in that process, but in that scenario, I'm not involved in that process. And so that park, literally, my only responsibilities of being the owner of that mobile home park is maintaining the infrastructure. So the roads, the sidewalks, the curbs, enforcing rules, and that's really it. I mean, that's our responsibility. So it's about as low maintenance as you can possibly get. So in that scenario, we'd be looking at applying about a 35% expense ratio. That's how much it would typically cost us to operate that park and set aside the necessary capital reserves on a yearly basis, on an annual basis. And so our quick and dirty method is to figure out whatever the gross rents are based on how many units they have occupied in that park, what they're currently renting them for each, and then apply a 35% expense ratio and then kind of see where that evaluation falls in place. We'll figure out the NOI at that point in time and then figure out what kind of cap rate that market might demand and then see what we think it's worth versus what the owner thinks it's worth if it works, like just from a price perspective. And then if we're close enough on that number, and then we kind of dig in, okay, well, what kind of financing might this park qualify for? Because that's kind of the variable, the big variable in the park business as well as financing that's available. Like this particular park's a really big one. It's nice. It's a quality grade park. And so it actually qualifies for very, very attractive like conduit or CMBS type financing, which is like 30-year amortization, 10-year term, 5% interest rate, very attractive commercial financing. So then we'll look at, what kind of, let's run out a projection model and see what our cash on cash returns look like year, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. We'll kind of run it out and see what this thing looks like over that, basically 7 to 10 year span, also with assuming, incremental annual increases as well on the rents. And then, so, I mean, but the really quick and dirty lane is really just applying a expense ratio, to the gross revenue of that park and seeing what our NOI looks like and then what I think the value is and see basically what they're asking for and see if my number is anywhere close. Like if I think it's worth 1.8 million and they think it's worth 3, we're really far apart. I mean, we're really, really, really far apart. There's no chance of ever probably closing that gap anytime soon. And so that's like a quick and dirty on like that park. That's like a perfect world. Now, I'll give you the other end of the spectrum. Like we own some parks to where we own a good portion of the rental units or of the mobile homes in the parks are the rental units. And so there's a lot more expenses associated with a park like that. We also own parks that have private utilities. And so they're not public supplied by the city. That we have like a well and a septic. And so those are more expensive to operate. And so in that scenario, if someone's giving me a park that has those components to it, I might apply a 50 or 55% expense ratio. And so I take the gross and apply the expense ratio, come up with my NOI, and then again, figure out what my evaluation looks like, just really quick and dirty, and seeing what they're asking for it and seeing if we're anywhere close. I mean, so that's just a really quick way. So anywhere from between like 35% expense ratio to 55% expense ratio, depending on what the infrastructure components look like. That's how we do a quick and dirty to see what we really have here. Like, is there even an opportunity here to talk about, or like, are you guys crazy because you're asking 5 million and I think it's worth $1 million? That's our quick and dirty method.
I think that's good. You have those numbers off the top of your head. You don't know how many people can't even figure a simple percentage, plus or minus 10%.
Yeah, I mean that's a big deal. I mean I mean, if you get that part wrong, I mean that's not a. I mean, if we're close in the numbers, then I dig deeper, Lane. That's when I actually run out like the financial projections. I'll basically try to determine what kind of debt's available for that property, and I'll run out like a real 10-year financial model and I'll see what it looks like in the long term, based on a assumed type of debt that I think we can get for that property, and I'll see what it looks like, how it's going to perform, and if it looks good in the long term, and I think I can buy it right, then we move forward. If I think that there's something inherently wrong there, it's not going to meet our numbers, or I've got concerns, then we typically will back away and go find something else. So
in that 2-minute exercise, like, if there's a spread between what's the asking and what you think it's worth, like, is there a certain spread that you don't even pursue it, like 20% or greater?
No, not really. Because what we'll do is I'll actually go back. I think that it's always in your best interest. Like, if it's a broker that's selling it, or even if it's an owner, like if they have a certain number, I walk them through my evaluation, and I just say, I'm struggling to find this major discrepancy of where you're coming up with your value, because I don't get it, because my numbers are real. Like, I'm putting the taxes in, I'm putting the insurance in, I'm putting the capital reserves in, I'm putting the management fee, and I'm putting everything in here, and I know the market really well that you're in. So I'm struggling to find out where your evaluation of $4 million comes in, and I've got one of $2 million. Can I walk you through my numbers, and then you tell me where the discrepancy is, and I'll play it that way, because I want them to, honestly, I'm not trying to lowball them without any kind of substantial proof underneath my offer. Like, I've got real proof. Like, I know the business, I know what these things are worth, and I'm evaluating it properly. What am I missing? And I know that I'm not missing anything, but I want to ask them, because I want them to tell me. I either want them to acknowledge the fact that they're trying to rip me off and sell me an overpriced property, or maybe they just have maybe they have no idea how to even evaluate the worth of their property, which actually is a lot of times more common than not. Even if it is a broker, they don't know. They truly don't understand how to underwrite the properties, and so I'll walk through that exercise. And at the end of the exercise, Lane, I had a call this morning. Before we, probably like an hour before we got on the phone together, with a park in North Carolina. They want $2 million. It appraised for $2 million. That appraiser's crazy. I mean, honestly, most appraisers don't know how to appraise mobile home parks. It's really worth, like, at the best, and I'll give them that because it's a great area. At the best, it's worth $1.82 million. And I'm talking like that is my ceiling. That's like if the collections are phenomenal and everything is like pristine, no deferred maintenance. And I walked him through my numbers, and he thinks it's worth $2 million because the appraisers think it's worth $2 million. I walked him through my numbers, and he basically told me that he thinks it's worth the extra 180 because it's a trophy property, because it's in a great area. You know what? That adds value to it, but it doesn't add $180,000 worth of value to it. Like, the numbers don't lie, and we have a discrepancy, and that in his mind is too big of a discrepancy. He wants $2 million, and it doesn't work for me. I can't pay more than 1.82 because that's what it's worth. And who knows? Maybe he'll come back to me and realize that everyone else is going to come to him as well and say, I can't pay more than 1.8 for it. And then he's going to come back to me and say, you know what? The market educated me. The market told me what it was worth. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe my appraiser was wrong. I'll sell it to you for 1.8. Or he sells it to someone that's willing to pay the $2 million, overpay for it, and wish them the best. So
yeah. But they're like, hey man, I got a deal. I got this deal. You gotta take this, Kevin. You gotta take this deal.
And it's all relevant, but it's all relevant because, like, for me, I need, like, on that deal, like, it is a phenomenal market, and there's a ton of upside in the rents, and I'm willing to pay for some of that. Like, I'm willing to, like, pay a premium knowing that there's a lot of upside and it's a phenomenal area, but I'm not willing to overpay for it. Like, if there's no emotions involved in what we buy, it's like, it's numbers. Like, it's got to make intelligent sense. And so, for me, like, maybe I need like a 15% cash on cash return on that deal going in, but maybe there's another investor that's willing to take an 11% cash on cash return because that's more than that's the higher return they've ever seen in their entire life, because they're used to having their money stuck in CDs or a money market account or mutual funds or something like that. And, so just because, like, for them, it's not overpaying because it's going to meet their needs. Like, it's going to give them the 11%. For me, it's overpaying because I think that I would never waste my time, the energy it takes to run that park, just to get a measly 11% cash on cash return. I know I can go find it somewhere else. And so it's all relative. I mean, everyone's got different investment criteria that they're looking for. Everyone's, like, I always tell everyone needs to figure out what their target return is that they're looking for out of an investment property. Because, like, Lane, what's a good deal for you might not be a great deal for me as far as, like, returns are concerned. And so it might not mean that there's something wrong with the property. It doesn't mean that you're overpaying for it because you're paying $200,000 more. It just means that it meets your objectives as far as returns are concerned. It just doesn't meet mine. So, who knows? We'll see what happens. But I think I'm right. Maybe he'll find someone else that thinks I'm wrong, and they'll pay him the $2 million. Who knows? But you know what? For me, the good thing about knowing that is, like, in my gut, I know what works for me, And I have no emotions, meaning like if I lose that deal and someone else buys it at $2 million, I won't lose a minute of sleep over it. Because if I knew if I'd have paid the $2 million, I'm going to lose more sleep over it if I pay $2 million than if I don't buy it at the $2 million. You know what I mean? So just let it go to someone else.
Yeah, I think that's no more apparent when, you know, you're talking to a broker and that broker's like, hey, Kevin, that the guy bought it for $2.5 million. And you're probably thinking, well, that's probably why he's selling now, because he bought it for too much.
Well, it's funny. Actually, this deal, they bought it 12 years ago. They bought it in 2006, which was literally the last peak of the real estate cycle. And they paid $2 million for it. And so in their mind, they're not taking any less than what they paid for it. And it's not my fault that they overpaid for it. I mean, they didn't overpay for it in 2006 prices, but look at it in 2008, they overpaid. Look at it in 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, they overpaid for it. Now they're getting back up again to, you know, what it's could be worth. And I think that someone might pay $2 million for it. Actually, I think it's in a phenomenal area. So someone might pay $2 million, but that someone isn't going to be me. You know, it could be someone else. And, you know, to each his own.
Yeah, I think you got a great philosophy there, and you know, it's kind of like the Donald Trump art of the deal. Is that, you know, he goes into any negotiation and he's just willing to walk, and that's just, you know, he did that with the healthcare, right? Like he went in there and he said, no, this is how it's going to be, and if not, no deal, and then they came back.
Yeah, no, it's funny how often people come back. I don't know if this guy, well, he was pretty mad at me, but I've talked to his wife before, and I could tell I had a good rapport with her. So who knows? You know, who knows? Maybe the wife talks some sense into the guy and says, you know what? Because they 1031, they bought this park on a 1031. They were California people. They had a lot of money back in 2006. They 1031'd into this investment. They'd never owned a mobile home park before, and they actually bought well. I mean, they did get a good asset. They kind of paid the peak price for it. But you know, who knows? Because here's the thing. Here's my argument to him. Hey, if you list it with a broker, because they kept using the argument, well, I think we're going to list it with a broker if you're not interested. I'm like, okay, sure, that's fine. You know, good luck. You know, guess what you're going to pay? Probably you're going to pay $100,000 of commissions with that broker. So, and also it's going to go out into the marketplace, and either the market's going to accept it or they're going to beat it up. You know, and that's going to affect what you can get for it as well. So just know that you want $2 million. I'm a buyer. There's no broker involved. Like there should automatically be $100,000 shaved off of that, because you're going to pay it with a broker. And that's assuming that you're going to get full asking price for it. So, you know, really at the end of the day, I'm willing to pay 1.82. We're not that far apart. We're really like $80,000 apart, because for some reason he failed to take into consideration the commission he's going to have to pay. And I kept telling him that, and in his mind, he's going to get $2 million net because that's what he paid for it. And, you know, so maybe the market needs to educate him. I'm not sure. And I hope he gets it. I really do. I hope they get what they want, and everyone wins, right? You know, the buyer wins because they get their property, and the sellers win because they got basically whole on a property they overpaid for 12 years ago. You know, so to each his own.
Yeah. So what's the current 2-week experiment that you're doing, or a longer 6-month project that you're working on?
Experiment? I mean, we just launched I don't know if it's a 2-week. I mean, we don't, it's not really an experiment, but, you know, I don't really look, 2 weeks is too short of a time, but 6 months. I mean, we just launched a $10 million mobile home park investment fund. And so, I guess that's kind of an experiment, not really, because, I mean, we're not testing it to see if we're going to move forward. We are moving forward. We just launched it. It's the first blind pool fund I've ever done. I have done syndications before, but never a blind pool fund. So, we're kind of not figuring it out, but I mean, we'll see how that goes. I mean, we basically plan on acquiring over the next 12 months. I mean, hopefully, you know, as far as equity is concerned, $10 million worth of mobile home parks, which could mean, you know, probably about 12 to 15 parks. Yeah, we're going to figure that out over the next year and see how that goes. So we've got the systems and processes down. We decided to go this route because we feel like we've got the infrastructure in place to take on a lot more parks now. And so I'll be excited to see how that pans out at the end of the 6 months as well as the end of the year, see how things are going. So we're excited. We're super excited.
Are you able to discuss some of like what are the preferred rates?
Yeah, sure thing.
What's the payout scheme?
Yeah, so I mean it's pretty simple, and it's pretty normal for the mobile home park space. It's a little different than the apartment space as far as like equity splits versus the general partners, limited partners. But essentially, we pay an 8% preferred return, and then it's a 50-50 split between general partners and limited partners.
That's a pretty standard across the board, multifamily?
Yeah, I'd say multifamily is probably more like 60-40, sometimes even 70-30. But the thing is with multifamily, they have to give the limited partners that much more because the returns aren't as high. So like you have to give away more in order to meet the investors' demanded return. So in our case, with the 50/50, we're buying great deals in great markets that provide substantially high returns, and we can provide that. Basically we're saying a 12% projected annualized cash on cash return and a blended, or overall IRR of over 20%, during the life cycle of that deal. And I have a pretty decent sized portfolio now that I own, not just personally, but I own it with a few other partners. And there's not one deal in that entire portfolio that wouldn't blow those numbers out of the water. And so the deals we buy, they just make sense. They make sense for the long term, and there's a lot of meat on the bone. I have no concerns whatsoever that we're not going to be able to hit those projected returns of the 12% annualized and the 20+% IRRs. So we're excited, and we've got a lot of investors that are excited, and it's just a fun space. It's a very lucrative space, but it's also a niche that is in ever growing demand because it's meeting the affordable housing demand that we have that we're not fulfilling as a nation. So it's very interesting niche, and it's a lot of fun. It's very lucrative, and there's still a lot of opportunities out there. So we're having a lot of fun with it, and looking forward to being in it for at least the next 10 years. I see there's a really good 10-year run in the mobile home park space. So we're going to try to capitalize on those next 10 years as much as we can.
So I don't know much about mobile homes, but I mean, it just seems like they're not creating more of them, right? So
That's it.
I just don't know demographics that well of the mobile home park clientele.
Yeah, I mean, so you're right. They're not making any more of them, which is one of the big selling points because there's a massive barrier to entry. I mean, as with any type of real estate investment, I mean, one of the key components you need to look at, like, what's the barrier to entry? Like, there's certain parts of the country where it might be like urban core area where you don't have to worry about anyone building like another apartment building or another, row of townhomes because there's just no land left. Well, that's not really the same, comparison as like the barrier to entry with mobile home parks, but yet it could be an area where there is land, but the municipalities don't allow them to be built. And so it's the only commercial asset class that has a diminishing supply, meaning like there's more mobile home parks being shut down or torn down every year than there are being built. Now, most of the time they get torn down or shut down for redevelopment purposes. Like 50 years ago when it was built, it could have been a kind of an invaluable piece of, or a not so valuable piece of land. But now today it could be in the middle of the progress, the path of progress to where the higher and better use is a shopping center. And so it's pretty common that mobile home parks get torn down for that type of reason. And some just get shut down because they're not being run properly. The health department comes in, shuts them down, or the owner just ages out of it and just kind of lets it go by the wayside and it falls apart. But our normal demographic, at least in our parks, there's multiple different types of parks out there. For instance, I live in Florida. In Florida, we have some really high-end parks. I mean, they're like lifestyle communities, whereas the people that live in those parks probably actually downsize from a stick-built home. They're not people that are looking for affordable housing. They're looking for a lifestyle. But our parks that we buy are more, we call them family parks, and so they cater to all ages. They're not like age-specific or restrictions based on age. So families live in them, and basically we cater to good, hardworking families, like the people that make $12, $15 an hour. Basically, $40,000 a year and under, kind of median household incomes. That's kind of our base clientele. That's who we're looking for. And there's plenty of really good people in that demographic range that they pay their bills on time. They're looking for a safe place to raise their family, and they choose not to live in an apartment. And so that's kind of our clientele is based on that would either, their choice is to either live in a C-class apartment or live in a mobile home park that gives them their own parking space. They can put Christmas lights outside to have their own yard. They can put a shed out back, and basically they even have the opportunity to own their own home for very inexpensively. And so if people that are in C-class apartment buildings, a lot of them don't even know they have the option of like living in a nice mobile home park. But one of the ways we actually fill up units, like we buy a park that's got vacancies, we normally aggressively target the C-class apartment buildings in the area, and we get a lot of interest from that clientele. A lot of them didn't even know there was an option for them to own a home for the same price they're paying for their one-bedroom apartment that they're living in, or two-bedroom apartment. So that's typically who we go after.
Do you see any like trend for like people under the age of 40 to go to mobile homes, or is it more of a 40 and over crowd?
I wouldn't say I see a trend. I guess where it depends on where maybe maybe where your park's located. Like if you own a mobile home park in Austin, Texas, then you'd probably see a trend of young people living there because there's like no affordable housing in Austin, Texas whatsoever. And maybe that younger demographic who might not ever consider living in a mobile home would consider living in it because it's in Austin, Texas. But I mean, for us, I don't know what the average age range is, but I mean, most of our people, they either have kids or they don't have kids, but they don't have kids because their kids are out of the house. They're empty nesters now. And so it's probably like early 30s, late 20s, early 30s. All the way up to some of our parks. I mean, we've got, a very good component of senior citizens, that live there and they're empty nesters and they live there. They don't have any kids, but so it's a very broad range, Lane. In every area that we own a park, it's slightly different. Even as far as ethnicity is concerned, like some of our parks are majority African American, some parks are mostly white, some parks are a mix of those two, and then other parks are Hispanic. I mean, we've got it just depends on the location they are in. To really what kind of age group is there, as well as ethnicity that's in that park as well.
Yeah, great insight. I think we can both agree that, any B class, C class, non-A class is where you need to be investing. I mean, that's the demographics is just staggering and just. Well, yeah,
obvious. Here's how I look at it. If you can't, and this is my little trickle down scale. If you can't afford to live in an A class, you live in a B class. Can't afford a B class, you move down to a C class. If you can't afford a C class, you move into a D class, which a D class in my mind is kind of like, you got to pack heat to walk around at night because like it's dangerous and there's drugs, sex, and rock and roll. Like there's a lot of bad elements that are going on in a D class apartment building. And so in a D class, if you're moving from that C class to a D class, so your other option, if you can't necessarily afford that C class, is go find a mobile home park in your town, one that's run properly. And more than likely, you could probably live in that mobile home park and actually have the ability to own your own home for probably the same price that you're paying or that you might pay for that war zone D-class apartment building you're about to move into. And then here's the step after that is that if you can't afford, so like our residents that live in our mobile home parks, and a lot of our residents own their own home. And so like our average lot rent, like across the board, it varies from area to area, but our average lot rent across the board is about $300 a month. And that's if they own their own home. So they're just paying the lot rent. They own their own home. If they can't afford that $300 a month, there is nowhere cheaper that they can live with their family than that home, than that mobile home park. There literally is nowhere cheaper. So if you can't afford to live there, then you live underneath a bridge or you're in a shelter, in a homeless shelter. So we're at the very end of the line as far as affordability is concerned, but yet it doesn't mean that we're bottom rung quality. Like most of our mobile home parks are nicer than even a lot of the C-class apartment buildings in the area. I mean, we do a lot of landscaping. We enforce rules, make sure people have a certain pride of ownership, make sure they keep up their homes, and so you get a lot of bang for your buck in a mobile home park. And then on top of that, the people that would never ever consider owning a home or thought they would never have the ability to own a home, they have the option now to become a homeowner very inexpensively. And it's just a beautiful thing. And we are seeing a very big surgence in demand for a lot of our parks as rents grow and grow and grow. And so, I mean, we do not have any issues whatsoever with occupancy in any of our parks. And most of the stuff we buy are distressed, and they have a occupancy issue only because they haven't been run correctly for a long time. But once we put the rules in place and we kick out the bad elements and start making the places nicer, man, they fill up really fast. There's a huge demand for it.
What kind of occupancy are you normally buying it at?
What we're buying at, it's all over the board. I mean, it could be as low as 40 or 50%, sometimes as high as 90. But I'd say on average, we're probably buying. And so I look at both physical and economic occupancy, right? I mean, so economic occupancy is really the important thing for me because just because there's a body in that trailer doesn't mean that they're actually paying their rent. And so I'd say across the board, economic occupancy when we take over a park is probably somewhere in like the 70% range. I mean, which is still, it's pretty low. But the good thing is if they own their own home lane, here's the beautiful part. Like if you're living in an apartment building and you don't pay your rent, or you can't afford your rent, all you got to do is put your mattress on your roof of your car, pack your backpack and your suitcase, and you're out. That's it. You move. You go somewhere else. In a mobile home park, if they own their own home, they do everything in their power to come up with that $300 a month lot rent. And there's two reasons why. Number one, that mobile home is probably the most valuable asset that they own to their name. And number two, it costs like $5,000 to move a single wide home. So if they can't pay the rent, they're not moving that home, meaning that they're not going to leave that home behind, right? And so and actually there's a third reason is that there's no cheaper place they can live. Like there's nowhere else they're going to find to live where they can house their family for $300 a month. And so most of the time we have very little to no turnover if they own their own home. Most of our turnover comes from like rental units that we might acquire in a mobile home park. So if they have trailers that the park owns, now they're rental units, that's where the turnover happens. Because really it's an apartment complex. I mean, really that's an apartment, for all intents and purposes. But when they own their own home, our turnover is extremely low, and they will do everything in their power to come up with that $300 a month so they don't lose that home. So they have a lot of skin in the game.
When I got smart and sold my primary residence to start investing in investments that actually made sense, I needed a place to diversify quickly as opposed to some money market or some high reward checking account. Let's face it, turnkey rentals are cool and syndications are great, but they don't come around often. I stumbled upon the American Homeowner Preservation Fund. The owner, George Newmary, once apartment syndicator too, is now sponsoring the podcast. His fund cuts the middleman out to crowdfund the solution to the mortgage crisis in America. They are empowering you to fund the purchase of distressed mortgages and earn returns that smoke any other passive fund. If you find something else better out there, let me know. Oh yeah, they work with families to keep them in their home after buying the underwater note at a huge discount. It's an opportunity to make an impact on families and communities while earning returns. Start investing with as low as $100 in investinahp.com. If you want the free Burn Zone book, please send me an email at lane@simplepassivecashflow.com.
Something you recently thought about, or something on your wish list that has improve your time savings or improvement in quality of life, like using VAs or something like that?
Yeah, I bought a drone. I bought a drone recently because I travel to a lot of our parks, and honestly, we used to hire people. I mean, this is a small scale, but it's number one, it's a toy. It's a fun toy to play with. But number two, we used to hire people. Whenever we get a park under contract, we hire people to go out and do like aerial videos and photos, as well as like street level photos, just so we can, number one, see the park before we travel there in person, like, physically travel there. But number two, we always want our investors to know what we're buying. Like we want to show them the quality asset. And then also allows us to catalog like the before and afters as well. Like, we kind of keep an update on how things looked when we bought it. A year later, we'll do another like aerial footage, video shoot with via videos and still photos. Just to kind of see like where we've taken it to in a year period of time. So anyway, instead of hiring that out now, and also to give me a reason to buy a toy and also save us some money, I went and bought myself a pretty fancy drone. So
what did that cost you?
I mean, they're like $1,200. They're not too much, but we were paying someone about $350 per property to go do what I could do. We had to go visit the property at some point anyway, and before we even buy it, and so we just take our drone out. It literally it's so small, it folds up to a really small size. And it takes amazing videos and photos. It's really easy to use. So it's been a lot of fun. And it's saved us money. So like three properties, it's already paid for the drone. So it's not a big cost savings, but that was my justification to my partners that we need to buy it.
Sounds like a good personal and business expense.
Yeah, no, it's fun. So, but plus it gets really cool. I don't know, there's a lot of cool things you can do. So we have the Mobile Home Park Academy, and we're going to start doing a lot of Facebook Live here coming soon. And this drone, literally, it's got a feature to where I can literally do a live Facebook live stream and fly a drone through a park and talk over it while it's flying around, showing the viewers what I'm looking at and what I'm talking them through. It's pretty cool. I'm excited to use it. I haven't used it for that yet, but that's gonna be pretty awesome. So literally give a tour. Say, hey, I'm at this mobile home park. We're looking to buy it. Let me give you guys a first-hand view of what I'm seeing and what we plan to do. Here you go. We're going to do a fly-through for the next 10 minutes, and I'm going to talk you through what we're going to do, what improvements we're going to make, and where the opportunity is in this park.
You should find that.
Pretty cool, right?
You should find the one that tracks you around. You wear the little bracelet.
This one does.
It follows you.
This one actually tracks you too. This one can track you too. I haven't used that feature, but it can track you as well. Yep. It can track you. You can walk around. It will just follow right behind you. It's pretty neat. I haven't used either one of those features. I literally just got it a couple weeks ago. So, I'm still learning it.
So the last question here is, Tony Robbins identifies two large concepts that we're continually struggling to gain perfection at. The first is the art of fulfillment, and the second is the science of achievement. So what is your first secret or hack to first science of achievement?
I think exercise plays a major role in, I think, everything I do, both achieving goals as well as just, happiness in life and, just how I interact with my family, how I interact with business partners. I mean, I attribute a lot of success to exercise. That's a big thing for me. And my brain works better when I exercise, and I'm healthier, I have more energy. So exercise is probably number one.
Yep. Morning or midday?
I most of the time I do it in the morning. I've got 2 really young kids, so if I exercise, whatever, I don't exercise every day of the week, but the days that I do, I wake up like about 4:00 in the morning, and I go out and get like 2.5 hours of a workout in before the family wakes up. So I'm not a morning person like that, but I force myself to do it because there's no time left in the day once the family wakes up, and then once I go into the office, and then I come home at night. Like, so a work-life balance is a big thing for me as well. And when I come home at night, I mean, there might be a few times here and there that if I've got to jump on a call, I will, but I'm like family focused, number one. Like, it's got to be about the family. I never ever want to lose those special moments of when my kids are small, or actually I don't want to lose it, whether they're small or big or whatever. I don't want to lose special moments because I was too busy. And so I'm very conscious of a work-life balance.
So that's your secret or hack to the art of fulfillment?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I mean, I really do. I don't know if you have kids, Lane, or not, but I've got a 3.5-year-old and a 5-month-old, and it's like every day is like such a blessing. It's such a wonderful experience. I look forward to it. I wake up excited like a kid on Christmas, like to go actually play with like my 3.5-year-old, like, because every day is like new for him. Like, whatever. Like every day is a new experience for all of us, but for him, like, he's like discovering so many new things every day, and like his vocabulary is like growing each and every day. It's just such a fun thing, man. So that's it's a big part of my life.
I don't have any kids, and I have an Instagram where I get to go cool places and do whatever I want and wake up when I want.
There you go. Yeah, man, that's awesome.
All right, anything we missed, and any contact information to get a hold of you?
Yeah, no, I don't know if there's anything we missed, but I mean, we can talk for hours and hours, I'm sure, about just real estate investing in general. But if anyone has any questions for me specifically, whether it's just about real estate investing in general or mobile home parks specifically, the best way to reach me is my personal email. It's kevin@kevinbupp.com. Then they can also, if they want to learn more about mobile home parks, they can even contact me through the website as well. But they can go to mobilehomeparkacademy.com, and we've got our podcast there, and we've got information on the academy that we teach, and so I had multiple different ways to contact me, but those are the best. My personal email again was kevin@kevinbupp.com. You can always reach me there, and I think that's it, Lane.
All right, cool. Appreciate it, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, Lane. It was a lot of fun, and just looking forward to catching up some other time. Okay.
All right. This website offers very general information concerning real estate for investment purposes. Every investor situation is unique. Always seek the services of licensed third-party appraisers and inspectors to verify the value and condition of any property you intend to purchase. Use the services of professional title and escrow companies and licensed tax, investment, and or legal advisor before relying on any information contained herein. Information is not guaranteed, as in every investment there is risk. The content found here is just my opinion, and things change, and I reserve the right to change my mind. Above all else, do your own analysis and think for yourself, because in the end, you are the only person who is going to look out for your best interests.